Okay, so you likely know Iceland for three things: volcanoes, avant-garde music, and enormous men. But there was a time in 1940 when the UK invaded Iceland. Yes, you heard, the UK invaded Iceland. Let's talk about that.
I hate Iceland! I hate Iceland!
So 1940 was not a good year for all and sundry. In fact, the 1940s sucked as a whole, and I don't see why so many people like to LARP the 1940s. Anyway, on the 9th of April, Germany invaded mainland Denmark and took it in 6 hours.
Oh hey! Wait, what are you...
Note how I said mainland Denmark. See, the Kingdom of Denmark was made up of mainland Denmark, the Faroes, Greenland and Iceland. Now, if the Germans took over Iceland and the Faroes, the UK would be fucked because while the south coast was understandably armed to the teeth, the north coast of Scotland had nothing but peat bogs and wick moonshiners, but that's a whole other kettle of fish. Meanwhile, in Iceland, the members of the All Thing were like, okay, so Denmark's fucked and the king is useless, I guess we're independent. And the British were like, oh, jolly good, do you mind if we put troops on you? And Icelanders, not learning the lesson from the Dutch, the Belgians and the Norwegians, turned around and said, nah, we're going to be neutral. This was not the answer the British were wanting, so they were going to do what they did best, take over Iceland. This was called Operation Fork, and it was not the Brits' best work.
From bean to cup, you fuck up.
See, the Brits believed that there was going to be resistance from three sources. The Germans that they believed that were on Iceland, the local police, and the Danes who understandably would not be too happy with the Brits taking what little land they still had. In reality, the only Germans on the island were the German consul, Werner Gerlach, and a collection of German merchant seamen who had hit an iceberg and got rescued by an Icelandic trawler. The Icelandic police gun squad was made up of 60 men, and what was left of the Danish Navy was in Greenland. So what about planning? Well, their maps were out of date and one of them was drawn from memory, and also nobody was fluent in Icelandic. Also, most of the planning was done en route. I mean, to be fair, they didn't think they really had that much time. The people who were actually going to be doing the work were the 2nd Royal Marine Battalion, who had only been activated 2 months ago, were partially trained, and some haven't even fired their rifles. They were told, with 2 hours notice, that they were going to go to an unknown location. That unknown location was Greenock.
Oh God! Oh Jesus Christ!
Once they were at Greenock, they would get on the HMS Berwick and the HMS Glasgow and get sent out to sea, where they would have to get familiar with new weapons that they would have to work with on Iceland between bouts of seasickness on the rough North Atlantic. Now, if you know one thing about the British invasion of Iceland, you know that there was one fatality, and it was one guy who very sadly committed suicide, which is understandable because these were very green troops who were told with 2 hours notice that they were going to a mysterious location which turned out to be invading a country. It's understandable why that might frighten a man to suicide. We don't know his name, but we know that he would have been terrified and likely had no one to talk to. Anyway, on a lighter note, let's talk about how the Brits cocked it all up.
A fucking omni-shambles.
So, at 1:47 on the 10th of May, HMS Berwick launched a ship from a catapult. The pilot of this ship was told to scout for subs and not to go anywhere near Reykjavik. Some wires must have been crossed because they flew several circles around the city, the one thing that they were told not to do. Now, Iceland did have civilian passenger aircraft, but they could not fly at night, though this plane stood out like a sore thumb and alerted 3 people: the Icelandic Prime Minister, the Chief of Police, and the German Consul, Werner Gerlach. The Chief of Police surmised that it was a plane from a warship that was carrying the new British ambassador. They had just declared independence after all. And you know what? He was half right. The new British ambassador to Iceland was on a warship heading towards Iceland, but there was obviously more to it than that. Werner Gerlach, on the other hand, saw the plane, drove down to the harbour with some binos, saw the ship and then shat himself. He then raced back home and started burning documents in his bathtub like he just found out he was in the Epstein files whilst trying to reach the Icelandic Foreign Minister by telephone.
Hi Ghislaine, this is Bill. Just calling to remind you of a certain f***ing NDA we signed. Call me back. You need to get out in front of this thing, alright? Get me on Rogan, Hannity, Andy Cohen, all of it!
Do you want me to unalive Miss Maxwell like we did with Jeff?
Yeah. See if Copperfield wants to go have his.
Stupidity, sir.
It's gonna be fine, it's gonna be fine. Who can take a sunrise? Sprinkle the dew.
At 3:40, an Icelandic policeman saw a small fleet of warship heading towards the harbour and couldn't tell their nationality, so he called up the chief of police because the laws of neutrality forbade more than 3 ships at war to make use of a neutral country's harbour and forbade them from flying over their territory. The chief of police figured that the ships were likely British, so he contacted the foreign minister, who told him to give the commander a bloody good telling off. So 400 Marines loaded themselves into a ship which took them into the harbour, where they were met by a small crowd of bemused Icelanders, the British consul and his staff, and the Icelandic police. The consul, one Mr. Shepherd, went to the Icelandic police and said, "Would you mind awfully if you could move this crowd? We need to unload our Marines." Certainly, said the police. So the Marines landed and the police chief, as instructed, tried talking to the ship's commanding officer, who basically just said, "Nah, fuck off, mate." I don't know why he was Australian. So he went to the Prime Minister, who said, "Okay, try to reduce conflict between the troops and the locals and don't interfere." The locals, understandably, were rather miffed, with one of them stuffing a cigarette into the rifle of one of the squaddies. The troops then went on to capture the post office, leaving a note in broken Icelandic saying, "Hippity hoppy, your island is now our property," and then went on to take the telecommunications office, the broadcasting office, and the meteorological office to stop news reaching Berlin. The next step was to head to the German consulate and capture the German consul. So they knocked on the door and Werner Gerlach answered, and basically it went down like this. "As a British, welcome. I hope you understand that this country was neutral." "Yes, so is Norway, Belgium and the Netherlands." Yeah, good point. Anyway, I should go and... Why is there smoke coming out your bathroom? Aurora Borealis? Localised entirely within your bathroom? So the British burst in and put out the fire in the bathtub, which was being used to burn all the sensitive German documents, with many of them being saved. Now, after the dust had settled, the Icelanders were still pretty pissed, but the UK turned and said, "Look, if you let us stay, we'll give you compensation, favourable trade deals and non-interference in Icelandic affairs, with all troops being withdrawn at the end of the war." Iceland said deal, which, to be honest, they didn't really have much choice in the matter, to be honest. Anyway, that's the story about how the UK invaded Iceland.